Good morning. My name is Maia Miguel, Senior Executive Director for Foundation Relations and Founding Executive Director for FIU Foundation's Office of Inclusive Philanthropy. I am so pleased that you all have joined us this morning for one of many diversity, equity, and inclusion roundtables that FIU Foundation will be hosting throughout the year. We are so pleased to host today's roundtable in collaboration with FIU's CasaCuba and Alumni Association. In honor of Women's History Month, we wanted to shine some light on the power of women in philanthropy. Research shows that women are driving many of the philanthropic decisions in this country, but are often an untapped resource in philanthropy. Here are a few insights that I would like to share. 43% of the nation's top wealth holders are women. Women control 51% or 14 trillion of personal wealth in the US and control 22 trillion in 2020. Single women are more likely to give than single men and are more likely to give higher dollar amounts. In 61% of US households, the couple makes their gifting decisions jointly. When it comes to approaching a couple about making a donation, make sure that the woman is also engaged in the process and their input is equally valued. And finally, never overlook or underestimate the philanthropic potential of female CEOs and small business owners. Women own 36% of all non-farm, privately held businesses. Joining us for our roundtable discussion this morning are Dr. Yogi Hernandez Suarez and Jacqueline Williams. Mrs. Vivian Diamond was hoping to be with us today, but had a personal emergency, so she is not able to join us this morning. Please keep her in your thoughts. Dr. Yogi Hernandez Suarez is founding Vice Provost for Population Health and Wellbeing here at FIU. In this role, she works collaboratively and across disciplines to incorporate health promotion and literacy into all aspects of student culture, administration, operations, and academic mandates. She is also Associate Dean for Clinical and Community Affairs in the Herbert Wertheim College of Medicine and serves as a strategic consultant to FIU's community-based academic health center and also serves on FIU Foundation's board of directors. She has been a physician leader in Miami for almost 20 years with positions in private, public, academic, and hospital settings. Her first role in leadership was in the Jackson Health System, where she advanced to serve as Chief Administrative Officer of Ambulatory Services. Both she and her husband are major donors to FIU, supporting FIU Embrace. Dr. Hernandez Suarez has an unrelenting passion for the inclusion and well-being of special populations. Jacqueline Williams is a certified public accountant. She graduated from FIU's College of Business in 1994 and was a member of the National Accounting Fraternity Beta Alpha Psi during her studies here at FIU. She currently serves as the head of internal audit for Miami-Dade Clerk of the Courts and has been a Miami-Dade County employee for 22 years. Ms. Williams is an active member of her local community and has focused her efforts to promote minority women in the field of accounting, as well as medical research to combat the onset of breast cancer. Jacqueline recently made a planned gift to establish an endowment to advance women of the African diaspora in the field of accounting. She is also funding current scholarships to advance students in this area as well. Moderating our roundtable this morning is Laura Padron, Associate Vice President, FIU Foundation, and Lily Betancourt Space, Director of Development for CasaCuba and Team Lead for Women's Initiatives, FIU Foundation Office of Inclusive Philanthropy. Turning it over right now to Lily.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this important discussion. I'm really looking forward to chatting with our panelists and learning more about their journeys and about their philanthropic decision-making. And so thank you so much to all of you. Laura, why don't you kick us off with the first first conversation starter.
Great, thank you. Welcome again, Jackie and Dr. Yogi, as we fondly call you. I want to start with actually asking each of you to share your philanthropic journey and specifically talk about when and how you became involved with FIU and why you chose FIU as a philanthropic priority.
I'm happy to start, Laura, and I'm so excited to be a part of this work today and the effort that FIU is making to reach specifically out to women and help us find bridges to philanthropy. So my specific journey to donating to FIU begins with my son, my husband, Jeff Simmons, and I have a son who is on the autism spectrum. And FIU has an amazing program called FIU Embrace, which is a holistic program that seeks to improve the lives of adults with intellectual and developmental disorders throughout their lifespan. And moreover, helps neurotypical people understand how to be inclusive and kind partners with families and individuals that are neurodiverse. So this is a program that started first in the College of Medicine, but then was welcomed into the office of the provost and now reaches across the university colleges to include the College of Law, the College of Hospitality, the colleges of nursing and allied health sciences, etc. We were really moved by the university's open-heartedness and forward thinking to develop this first in the nation type of program. My husband and I trained in the Northeast in very established universities and really did not find the kind of open architecture that FIU has to bring in new thoughts and particularly intercollegiate and collaborative work. The system of care that these very frequently severely communication impaired people need really takes all hands on deck and is not the work of a single college. And it was the vision of the provost and the president and frankly, the entire university community to take on this complex problem in a scholarly and open-hearted way. So our decision to bring a planned gift to FIU was an easy one. We knew that this was the university that would take the spirit of our donation to the furthest and in perpetuity be able to train future leaders for the people with disabilities and to train advocates as well as therapists, as well as clinicians through the Simmons and Hernandez Suarez Fellowship. We got great support. We are not a family of wealth. My mother always jokes that the two poor kids at Hopkins Medical School found each other and got married, and that is true. But we do were able to understand how to make a planned gift that is significant and then use that planned gift to leverage for other dollars and grants coming in for this really important work. I imagine, like many, had the benefit of receiving dollars during my training, both undergraduate and in medical school. And so I understood the value of giving to universities and the transformation that that can make, both in the lives of individuals and in communities. So it was an easy decision for us to put our dollars and our confidence in FIU for this extremely important work.
Thank you. Thank you. Jackie, share your journey with us.
Glad to be a part of this roundtable. It's nice to see everybody and be a part of this. My journey actually came to fruition last year in 2020. And during COVID, actually gave me an opportunity to slow down the positive aspect of what we went through last year. It gave me an opportunity to slow down in my professional career. You know, and I've always been aspiring to climb to the top in whatever it is that I do. But because of that, I became very wrapped up and involved and didn't take a lot of time to think of what was important to me. During COVID, I realized that, you know, life is short, and I had an opportunity to realize that I was ready to give back. As Dr. Yogi had mentioned as well, you know, I was a recipient of scholarships when I was going to school at FIU. And there was a donor that made a very lasting impression on me. It was a successful Latin woman, business owner, an entrepreneur that was gracious enough to fund a scholarship, and I was a recipient of that scholarship. And I had always had that in the back of my mind. If I were to be in a point that I could do something similar, this is what I wanted to do. But in fact, as I mentioned, you know, my life in my professional career has been so busy that it was a thought. But because of COVID, I actually realized I had to measure what was important. And at that, recognizing that I was ready and this is his time to take that step. So being able to actually play an active role in being able to give back has been a very important step for me to take back in 2020. It actually put things into perspective for me. I was able to feel better about what the future holds. Just the mere fact of being able to work with FIU, you know, the school that had a very big impact of where I am today and where my professional career, you know, started and had grown, and the opportunities are endless. So the reason I am here today, as they mentioned in the introduction, you know, I wanted to actively be around, literally, when a scholarship is being able to be granted a student, similar to how I was impacted when I was a recipient. So to be a part of this now is a very rewarding process, and actually able to realize that I can do this. It's an affirmation to me that I can actually realize something that I have been wanting to do from such a long time. So again, you know, I'm so happy to be a part of this and be involved in FIU, the strength in FIU, the people behind, you know, getting alumni to actually be a part of this journey. I'm so thankful.
Laura, if I could just piggyback off of what Jackie said, I love the comment that this kind of gift giving is in itself an act of hope, right? And I love that because it is a investment in the future. It's an investment in the optimism and the potential of FIU. And you know, Jackie, I have to say it has meant so much to me and my family to see the first two fellows start. They're both women, and they are looking at different parts of this complex problem. One woman is looking at employment issues, and another woman is looking at family support during the transition of young adults out of the school system and into the community. And it has meant so much for my parents, who are in their 80s, who were also instrumental in this gift, to see their money do something that will impact the life of this community in which their grandchildren will live. And I think that doing it while you understand it and can enjoy it, I think that's an extraordinary point that you made. And I appreciate you linking that to the word hope in my head.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
So Thank you both for sharing your stories. It really is a reminder that philanthropy is something really personal and something that, giving in general is something that you do based on your value system and what matters to you. And I really, appreciate your sharing it, right? Because that is a personal thing, and your motivations are really meaningful. And also, I want to thank you for your generosity to FIU, right? Because there's so many other worthy things to invest in, but really FIU has so many different avenues where you can have impact. And I really appreciate your finding the avenue that's meaningful for you. Having said that, we're talking specifically about women and their giving, and we talk a lot about the women's networks are very powerful, and sometimes they go untapped. So how do you think that fundraisers and advancement professionals can help women to engage their circles of influence and do what both of you have done, right? Which is be inspired by others to continue the journey.
I will start with that, Dr. Yogi. I think what I'm actually thinking of that now, and I think this discussion is wonderful because it gives us an opportunity to think of how we can empower women in our network to also have the same feeling and personal reward in this whole act of philanthropy. So I think, and something I plan on doing is, bringing forth the women that are in my circle that I feel are strong women, that have the same mindset, that are entrepreneurs, that are striving, working towards, their goals. Like, for instance, as I mentioned, like myself, we're all working so hard to attain these goals of ours, but we don't stop to think also what's important to us. And I want to make that step to let them recognize what I've gone through at this stage of my life, what they can potentially do, and what's the reward of that at the end. So I think as fundraisers and advancement personnel is, which you're probably already doing, but I just wanted to share my feeling, is tap into those of us that you are already involved in, that are already participating in things like this and are involved in giving scholarships back to students of FIU, is tap into those individuals and see if they know someone in their network that could possibly be a person that would want to be involved in that. I think we are great resources to bring people towards the university and let them realize what they can do. And I certainly plan on doing that. In fact, I have, a colleague of mine that I met while at FIU, and she's an accountant as well. She has her own company. She took a leap of faith. She's been, the owner of her company and been quite successful for, probably about 6 years. And I actually mentioned it to her, actually, after being invited to be a part of this roundtable, that I mentioned to her, I would love to get her involved in something like this. And she was actually welcomed the idea. She hadn't thought about it before. So that's why I think as, donors, we also need to take that responsibility on to share what we've experienced and bring that to FIU, to your group. And as in turn, for the advancement personnel, reach out to people like ourselves, because we're more than happy to share that. I think a lot of it is just slowing down and, for us to realize, get out of this race that we're in and kind of step back and take a few steps back, because if not, time passes and we don't get to do the things that we really are important to us.
I agree. I'm an OBGYN, and so I've spent a career listening to women, and I do believe that story and narrative are important, and sharing, your story, Jackie, me sharing my story begins to normalize and bring into expectations the participation of women in philanthropy. I think, you know, again, having been raised in the Northeast, there is a very old and ingrained trope of philanthropy, you know, being a very male and only for the extraordinarily wealthy. And by wealth, I mean generational wealth, not
Right.
not just, you know, ability to achieve dollars in your current job. I think we have to break through all of that. And it's just another old story that has to be rewritten and invite women in on their terms. I'm of the age of feminism when, you know, the first wave of feminism was we all should be the same as, you know, how do we climb the ladder so that we can be the same kind of leader that men were? And I think, you know, the current understanding of women in leadership is how do we break through and then lead with our authentic selves, which is much less pyramidal and much more inclusive, and a shared leadership and a shared power build. And I think that women are, in general, are very open to hearing each other's stories and deriving new ways to give and support. Not everybody has to show up with $1 million. Right. And if only the people with $1 million show up, there are many marginalized ideas and peoples that will not be at the table. And so how do we, you know, redesign this so that there is, you know, representation? You know, as somebody who has spent a career concerned about women and concerned about people with disabilities, you know, you got to elbow your way to the table to tell these stories. And so we need that creativity, the innovation that we're seeing in young people of all genders to help us redefine what it means to give and what the return on that looks like. And then I'm with you, Jackie. I think then the sky's the limit, because new priorities will be set. New ways of collaboration between the community and the university. And again, having searched nationally, I can think of no better partner than FIU to do that work because of its DNA based on inclusion and reflection of the community and the power, right? FIU is big. FIU is important. It is on the national agenda. And it takes with it that spirit of inclusion that we frequently do not see in universities that are longstanding.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Dr. Yogi. I think one of the things you mentioned about, you know, the inclusion where it's not limited to the elite group. And in fact, I can speak directly to that. In fact, when I approached this whole process, I actually thought I would not be accepted, to be honest. You know, that when I made that phone call and how welcoming FIU was from my phone call, and to include me, you know, as an outsider, never doing this before, always thought about it, this thing about saying that, you know, realizing that I was ready. I didn't realize that I could be ready before. I didn't think that I was able, you know, like you say, Dr. Yogi, is that I thought that it was limited to those that are coming from family wealth, generational wealth, an elite group, that somebody like myself could not be involved in this process. So I think that's such an important message to get out to, you know, the masses, and to let people know you can come in at various levels. It's important to be active and do this step. You can be there, you can do it. You know, you don't have to be this elite group. I think that's a very important point that you pointed out, Dr. Yogi. And, you know, I completely agree with that.
One of the questions that came up in the Q&A, I'll just repeat it here, is what did I mean by meeting people where they are? And I think this is a good segue to that, right? Because if I came to people and said, you know, I'm doing this work and I need $1 million from each of you, you can only imagine I don't have that circle of friends. And I think that people, when they think about our spheres of influence, all in the old model, they're only thinking of, you know, what other rich people do you know? And that is not how to lift many of these, especially again, the work of marginalized people is really done in collaboration with lots of folks giving what they can, and making those folks feel just as important and heard as the $1 million donor. And listen, that doesn't mean we don't want $1 million. I would love millions with an S of dollars. But the consensus of collaborative giving and collaborative outcomes that are based through FIU Embrace, for example, has an advisory board where community sits and we listen. We try to shape what we do based on what is needed and resonates, because then we know that that virtuous cycle happens, right? I gave a beginning, people were heard, people congregate, people give more, people spread the word, people say, you know, when you give of hard-earned money, right? My money is earned. And I think there are a lot of people on this call who understand what that means, right? There's no money that happened that we didn't earn. And so when you put your money to work like that and you see how it then takes life and spirit and makes something of it that means something to you and others, that's when you have that, again, that open architecture that says, listen, if you got $5, I feel like it's like a NPR, right? So, you know, the people, they are so happy to get the $5, and we would be happy to get the $5 because $5 from 1 million people is $5 million, right? And think of the coalition and the advocacy that comes from those large groups as opposed to single individuals. And so it's different work. And it doesn't mean that the big dollars are not welcomed, but how do you get it all? In other words, the big dollars as well as the people who want to be with you and who can give, and you have to meet them where they are and say, hip, hip, hooray. Thank you for supporting Embrace.
Right. And also I think too, that people do not realize how much they're able to give until they get their foot through the door.
That's right.
You know, you once you get in and you realize you're already there now, something you've been thinking about, you realize how important it is, what the personal reward is. Once you get in, then it actually, to me, it opens up that people may think, oh, I only have this certain amount to give. But once they get in, then they realize, oh, they reprioritize. Then they realize I can give a whole lot more. So it's important to tap into that, and then it will certainly grow.
Well, and I think, Jackie, you know, I'm a first generation person here in this country, and if you don't come from a family that of generational wealth, you may not know a lot of ways of giving, right? So we learned about a planned gift. We learned about how to multiply money. That was part of our journey to understand those things, but we wouldn't have learned of those opportunities if we hadn't been welcomed at the table and FIU hadn't met us where we were, listened to us, and then had the knowledge and the interest and really the enthusiasm of cultivating a couple like us to bring us where we are.
Exactly, I agree.
I'd like to jump in here because we talked about a lot of things that are important to point out. One is that intimidation. So FIU is in this big capital campaign, first comprehensive campaign, 750 million. So it's very exciting, it's very inspiring, but then at the same time, it can be very intimidating. If you're thinking, well, how could I possibly contribute to 750 million? I don't have $1 million. So I think that having these conversations like we're having today help help get the word out and help people understand that you don't have to be that $1 million donor. And to what you both have said is that once you enter and you feel welcomed, if we are talking about what is meaningful, then we're not talking about the dollars. We're talking about the impact that you want to make. And then we figure out how we can make that happen. And then we look at all those vehicles. And it's a combination. And so I think, and even to be honest, with a lot of our folks that do have that $1 million, there's a lot of things that we can do to multiply their dollars. Dr. Yogi, I love that term, and they don't even know. So, philanthropy is a forever evolving work that we all do. So I think when you talk about your experience and both of you and your desire to make impact, when you think about so many organizations that you can be involved in and that you can give through to make those impacts, a lot of what keeps us there and keeps giving is the experiences you have, both positive and negative. So I would like for you to both reflect on if there has been any negative experience, probably not at FIU, but we want to be able to learn what's working and what's not working, and whether it's our mistake or another organization's mistake, and we don't have to say where. We want to be able to learn from those mistakes and not repeat them. So if you could reflect and think of, and I know you both, and Jackie, we were just talking about a wonderful experience that you recently had that we'd like for you to share as well, but also something negative, something that just turned you off and said, this organization is not for me or is no longer for me.
My experience with being a donor and with FIU being the first organization I wanted to give to, there was nothing negative. It was all positive. FIU had such an impact on my career and where I am today and what the potential that I've able to accomplish. The challenges I may have experienced while I was going at school built me to be stronger. And from that's how I've been able to craft, with FIU's help, where I wanted to designate my donation to. So, where I wanted to be able to encourage women of considered, minorities in the field of accounting. I think the statistics are very low for that demographic to be, in professional accountants, certainly studying at FIU. So I did not experience that diversity when I was in school. So some may think of that as being a negative experience, but to me, it was an indicator that I use it as being something where I can contribute to help, in the future. So that helped me grow to where I am. And, my experience with another organization that I've made a planned gift to is any organization that really had an impact on my life, that has helped me along the way. When I realized that I could give back, which I said again, the other organization happened at the same time when I had the time to slow down and recognize that it's time. It was being able to give back to those organizations that had a big impact on me and what I can help and what areas that I may have had some experience with that I didn't see what I wanted to see. Well, here it is. I have an opportunity. And that in itself is something that you can't, that's just a personal development for me. So that's been my experience. It's all been learning and then rewarding and a positive experience.
Wonderful. Dr. Yogi?
Sure, I can piggyback a little bit perhaps on some of the downside of this. And I think for us, Again, because we understand that the work around the people with disabilities, and particularly intellectual and developmental disabilities, is legacy work, is not quarter to quarter work. For us, it was intentional to move our gifts and our abilities to give into a legacy organization, an organization that we know will be here year over year, and whose values we know are consistent with staying relevant and utilization of contemporary business processes. Because part of the concern about giving, especially planned gifts or large amounts of money that you would like to see function and multiply over time, is that you are counting on that organization's survival and ability to thrive in a changing environment. I think all of us in business, if we thought things were changing before the pandemic, hang on, right? So we want our monies and our hopes to go into organizations that we know are going to make it and thrive in the changing world. And so part of our decision was to essentially make investments in organizations that we, and I've spoken to other people in our same setting who have reshuffled the deck on dollars to make sure that they're in places that we know that are gonna, not just survive, but thrive in what is a consolidating marketplace for philanthropy. And again, it's different. It depends on what your outcomes are and what your impact is. If you're looking for something in the immediacy, but if you're looking for legacy work, year over year work, then I think it means a lot to be with a university, and obviously a state university and a thriving state university.
So thank you, Dr. Yogi. I think that's so true. And you spoke about intentionality just now. And really when FIU founded or established the Foundation Office for Inclusive Philanthropy, it was with that intentionality in mind, right? How do we reach folks who, for whatever reason, are not traditionally cultivated for giving? And really we talk about philanthropy having to do with impact and influence. And so we want to make sure that we are being inclusive in our efforts for philanthropy. So could you share a little bit about your thoughts? We talked about women networks and women who traditionally have done things like giving circles, right? Where they've said, we're going to take this into our own hands and we're going to get together and figure out what matters to us and have the impact. So there's a long history of that that isn't really institutionalized generally, right? It happens in the grassroots. It happens around kitchen tables. It happens in churches. It happens in a lot of places that we don't think of. So could you share with us, both of you, your thoughts about how we can, as this incredibly large, powerful institution, how can we be more intentional about addressing in our efforts? Jackie, you have a thought?
Yes, Libby, your internet connection on my side wasn't very clear. I think your question might have been, what's your thoughts related to diversity and inclusion in philanthropy? Is what your question was?
Yes, I'm sorry, I'm having some unstable internet. So how can we be more intentional about that process, taking it from those grassroots, taking it from those kitchen tables into a large institution like ours?
I think one of the things is bringing it back to normalcy, that, it's not restricted to this elite group, and being supportive of the diversity of those that are able to be donors, to have that philanthropic goal in mind is, just reaching out to the masses that on a more of a normal level, that it's not just limited to a special group. I think that's an important approach that the university could take to ensure to be more inclusive to the mass public, to various levels of a generation. It only is not limited to an age group, an older age group that you can get involved, at a younger age. You mentioned, as I had just experienced about meeting the donor that I had received a scholarship for back in 1994. And, I've come to realize that that donor was somewhat a recent graduate of FIU. I'm thinking about that back in 1994, to be that forward thinking, that someone's almost, right out of college, where people are just thinking, go, 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 drive, drive. It's all about me. Let me, be on this climb and don't have time. I came to realize that after speaking with her, grateful for that opportunity. She's inspiring me even more so, that I realized how early in her professional career did she become a donor. So I think that's important, to that stigmatism, where bringing it back to normalcy is letting the masses know that, at any time that you can be involved in this process, that you don't have to wait, that you can become involved, and how potentially, rewarding it can be. It's something that I hope to experience, that, now I wish I had done it earlier, that I could actually be involved in this process, and hopefully I'll experience something that I was able to, give back to her, is letting her realize her impact on me when I was in college, when I was struggling, when I was working towards my goal, that, for her to actually see that where I am now and how much she had an impact on me. I think that's coming back full circle, to let her realize what she did, from so long ago. So I think it's that inclusion and diversity, and bringing it back to normalcy, letting that, the masses know that, you can start a lot earlier. I think that's important. How we go about doing that, I'm sure that's going to be a difficult task. But like everything else, if it's not difficult, you're not going to be successful, right? So, I think that's important.
And let me just say that I think the university, or the foundation's decision to establish the division of diversity, equity, and inclusion under Ms. McGill really is demonstrative of that intentionality, right? So how now, with that opportunity there in place, and with Maia as a wing girl, how can I use that with my own network of women to then help lift their education on how to diversify their investment? Because in many ways, when I look at how we run our lives, part of it is investment for dollars for retirement, investment for dollars for university for our daughter, etc. But part of what I see, and happily my husband, we are united in this, is the investment in philanthropy, which brings a return, which is not monetary, but that Jackie has described as this energizing force that then fills you to keep, to roll in different ways and fill your spirit in different ways. And I think this year where we have done so much introspection, and I'm such an extrovert, it has been a very challenging year for me. I realize how much that energy and vibe that I get back means to me. And if I had to quantify it, it would be worth every dollar I've put in. But I think that there's a lot of education and a socializing that we can do amongst our networks of women. And now with support from this division in the foundation, we have a natural partnership where we can say, hey, I want to host either hopefully something in person, but for now a Zoom meeting where, and it doesn't mean that they have to come to give to what matters to me, although that would be lovely. I think that they need to understand how to awaken that spirit of what means something to them. I also think that women are really great at reciprocity, right? So listen, I'm raising money for this, you're raising money for that, right? So I'm going to give my $100 to what matters to you, and you give your $100 to what matters to me. And then that starts to lift an agenda of matters that matter to women because of the interconnectedness of giving.
And Dr. Yogi, I just have to comment, you have such a wonderful way of putting things visually in the way you speak. You mentioned about putting, awakening the spirit in others to have them realize what's important to them. You really put a visual with your words. And I think, I hope as a result of this meeting that, people do get that and can remember that. I certainly can. And I appreciate.
Well, I appreciate that. And I think everybody's stories matter. I can almost visualize your encounter with this older Latin woman, right? I mean, that could be my mom who gave some money to pay it forward. My mom was an international student back in the 50s, came from Cuba and trained in North Carolina. And it was on somebody's dime that she was able to do that. And so to her, she has always given, even if it's a little, to her college, to her alma mater. And it's in her will when she dies that some of her, whatever's left, goes to Warren Wilson College in North Carolina, because somebody paid it forward and made it possible for her to come to the United States and train as a teacher and set her life in a different direction. And I think we don't realize, I think we undervalue these little things that really are life-changing. It was life-changing for you to get those monies from that woman.
Yeah.
And it will be life-changing for the monies that you have given for somebody else. And when you think about it like that, then shoot, every dollar matters.
Agreed.
Thank you. I think, obviously inclusivity means, making room at the table for everyone, and the intentionality of inviting everyone at that table. And we've talked about so many varieties of inclusivity when we're talking about age and dollars, and they're all different, and yet they're all important, and they all need to have a space at the table and a voice. And the work that Maya is leading, and with our work at the foundation and conversations like we're having today, help both sides, because that whole idea of inclusivity and intentionality is to break those perceptions or break the stereotypes. And that has to do with us as we look to engage donors and future donors. Don't just look for that wealthy male, old money, 80-year-old, whatever it is, that whole thing is the message for us too. We have to be very intentional and conscious about when we're looking at involving and inviting people to join and support and invest in FIU and the students and communities we serve. And then the other message is for donors who think, oh, that's not for me, I don't fit in, or my dollar is not going to matter, or I don't have that kind of money. So it's helping both sides think differently and think and feel that they belong. And then we are making progress. And you both talked about, and Jackie, I'm thinking about your meeting recently with your donor from 94 and how you now reflect and how she was an inspiration for you all these years to want to give back. So inspiration is key. And as we talked about your philanthropic goals today, is mentoring a part of that? And how does that look? And what would that be like for you? And how are you approaching that?
Yeah, that's an interesting, and thank you for that question. Yes, in fact, mentoring is a big part of what I would like to get more involved in. And I really feel that, you know, a lot of the experiences I've had from other women that I have admired has had an impact on me. You know, there was a woman that I worked for many years. And in fact, you know, she's very busy minority professional. And she actually took the time to be a mentor for other minority women students studying accounting. And that had a big impression on me. And, you know, again, I thought that's later on in life. But, you know, as I had this experience meeting this donor, realizing that she did it so young in her life, to this day, I'm still inspired. After having that conversation, it makes me think, okay, you know, with my network of circle, I can let people not only at my age, but younger, that they can be involved. So as far as mentoring, yes, you know, I think that's an important component. And being able, when I realized that I could, you know, be involved now and be able to not only have an endowment later on, but actually give scholarships currently, which is what I'm doing, that I can actually be a mentor, you know, whether it be for this aspect, because I do want to meet who the students are, but that's something else as well. Yes, mentorship is a very important part. It's another way of giving back. And if I can, you know, tandem that with the scholarships that I'm giving, because you know, I didn't have a mentor when I was going through school. You know, I'm from Jamaica. You know, when my family migrated here to the States, my family, you know, I was the first one to finish college, you know, in my family. So they didn't know about these opportunities, you know, what was available out there. You know, we were just going, and I just had the drive, and, you know, FIU was instrumental in that and helping me become aware of certain things. But, you know, that's so important. You know, mentorship, I think, is an important aspect to help those that may not already know, you know, what's out there, to, you know, what vehicles are available, what type of career, you know, that someone like myself or another woman, let's say, that we're speaking about getting women involved, is the how, you know, these things are so important and can be a silent impression on a person for where they get to at the end of, after several years, that they actually come to realize, wow, that was a big, important part of my life. So I think mentorship is very important, and it's something that I definitely want to take an active role in.
I agree. I mean, you know, I'm here because of, you know, women who've mentored me. I'll just also state that I think that many perhaps of the issues that are of high value to women, there may not be an easy platform for. What do I mean about that is that people may think that we don't value some of the social justice issues that are of high importance to women, or in fact that people might even be ashamed to say, look, what I'm interested in is, you know, protecting people against domestic violence, or understanding complex problems like, you know, women in immigrants, or issues associated with refugees. I mean, women have had such a vast and sometimes very challenging experience in their life that what they value may not, as you say, Laura, be open conversation at a table. I have to tell you that it was initially very challenging for me to talk about my son and his disability, and but I felt like I had to overcome that so that the issue could be brought forward, so that he and people like him could get access to resources and the brain power and the transformative nature of universities. And so part of what we have to do is, you talk about making the people welcomed at the table. I think we also have to make space for issues and conversations that have not been typical of philanthropy, because I think the things that move women are frequently not on financial or political agendas. It's changing as we see more women with economic and political power bringing issues to the table, you know, childcare, caretaking in general. I'm so delighted to see this administration actually talking about caretaking and the economic toll that it takes on people in this country, mostly women. So how do we, and how does FIU continue to make space and safe space for someone like me to come and tell a story? And I'm not the only one, right? And the university is such a powerful resource for complex problem solving because of all of the extraordinary cognitive diversity that's there. You know, answers for things may come from the least expected places. I have to say that we have found resources and enthusiasm for embrace way beyond the College of Medicine, right? If we had only stuck with medicine, we would have a very narrow view of a very complex problem. Understanding policy issues, legal issues, you know, alternative therapies, alternative financing. It has been a wonder to see the university open up its arms to a problem that is national and global. So I think that carving a space and welcoming new conversations that may be challenging and new to the ears that are hearing them. Boards of philanthropic boards still very male across the country, right? How do we tell our story of things that matter to us and have them heard and have them lifted to the agenda of the board? FIU is ready for that with this new office and with Maya's leadership. And so again, it's like an icebreaker, right? It's carving the way so that we can then come behind and do the work.
Yeah, and I would agree with that, Dr. Yogi. You bring across a very valid point that it's the issues, open up the table, open up the discussion, you know, allow the forum for women to discuss what's important to them. And then as an advancement group, as yourself at FIU under Ms. McGill's direction, you know, then you can tie that to academia. You know, what's important to them? How can we tie it to academia to say, okay, with directing these monies to this particular program, as Lily and Laura mentioned, what vehicles are available through donor programs, grant giving, to address those concerns. I think it's a very important direction to take. That is certainly not, you know, that much at the forefront now. That, you know, that would help to be more inclusive, to get that diversity and to increase, you know, ultimately the goal is to really increase the gift giving for the university, to continue FIU to grow as the successful institution that it is. You know, I think that's a very important and very good point. Thanks for bringing that forward.
Sure, and the university, just to double down on what you said, the university benefits from hearing from half the population, right? So, you know, what is the future of employment? How should we be educating people? You know, the university's main job is to educate people for jobs and for employment and for a successful civic life, whether it's in this community or other parts of the planet. And hearing everything about, there's so much ungelled now. Everything is so loose after coming out of this impactful world experience. What is it going to mean to have a job in the future? What are the capabilities that you need, as well as competencies? What are the attitudes? How should you be talking? Who should you be talking to? All of this, the university gains from opening that discussion through the foundation as an ally. And then trust me, the provost and the president are at the meetings for the board. They are listening. And that goes back to the university and rechannels and redefines energies to shape programs, which ultimately then, as you say, then prepare people for what's really contemporary employment and contemporary civic life.
Yeah, and I think as far as you mentioned about shape the program, and from what we went through and what we realized, how things are functioning, what's going to be the change from going through this year of working remotely. People had to become very creative to be able to adapt to these new requirements. There's going to be a need for all of that. We have to reshape, rethink, reform, redirect. As you say, Dr. Yogi, reshape programs to try and address things in the new environment that we're all going to be living in. And as far as these programs and employment, actually, when I think about it, is even on trying to redirect that, open that conversation, as we mentioned, trying to find a vehicle, the university finding a vehicle to address these topics that are of interest to women. And it's not only about finding employment, it's providing a service, that, somebody coming out of school, for instance, this woman that, I just met, she was, let's say 5 years out of university. She was actually not really in full employment. She was actually providing a service. She wasn't in the throes of her employment. She wanted to give back so early, coming out of university. So it's not only about thinking for employment for people, and we have to make, our students realize that as a service. What else can you provide? What can you help in? And
I think these young people are ready to hear this and eager to hear it, right? I mean, this generation, I'm a boomer, I'm the tail end of the boomers, and we've had our run, right? We served our purpose, but I think the young people in university now that we are educating, they're waiting for us to feed that side of them. And I think it's an expectation of that generation that they're there, yes, to be employed and to be gainfully employed, but also there is an element of service and give back and personal fulfillment that is on their agenda much younger than it was for us. And the university is trying to feed that by understanding, how do we make people who understand their obligations for social justice? How do we make people who understand the obligations for their personal health as well as the health of the community? It's not enough to just say I have a higher ed degree. What kind of a person did I turn out to be, right? So that is the kind of thoughtfulness, at least when I have my educator hat on, that the students are pushing us to that, and we need to rise to that. It's these conversations that show you how FIU is trying very hard in every sector, right? In the education sector, in the civic life, in philanthropy, and in your personal life, and your personal well-being, whether it be your physical or your behavioral self, your mind. We are trying to make good, smart people, and that's a lot of what I love about FIU. That those things go hand in hand.
So thank you so much. I'm really inspired by this conversation generally, and all the different insights that you all are providing. So my question, I want to dig a little deeper. Dr. Yogi, you addressed some of the issues for women in particular and concerns that women have. So when we talk about this part of the Foundation Office for Inclusive Philanthropy, we talk about increasing giving by women, but also increasing giving to women and women's initiatives and initiatives that matter and move the needle for women throughout their lives, right? So, and I know that this is a particular area of interest. You've dedicated your career to women and their care. So can you speak a little bit to how we as an institution can help increase that visibility and the funding for initiatives for women and girls?
I think we're on a good start, right? The Office of Diversity and Equity and Inclusion is a good stake in the ground. I think increasing the number of women on the board, and how do we open up that because I know there are some hurdles, right? That's part of the it's like everything, there are certain long-standing ways in which people get power, and is there ways to I'm not saying that because I currently you have to have a certain level of engagement and giving to be on the board, and I understand that. But for example, how do we get out that yes, Yogi and Jeff gave a lot of money, but it's a planned gift. We are giving money that is through an insurance vehicle that when I leave planet Earth, leaves Embrace several $1 million. Now, what the university is doing is leveraging that gift to bring cash money now to help Embrace function in the now. And so there are ways, I think, of helping to bring that multiplier effect that then allow more women at the table for the board of directors, that then allow more voices to be heard. And I don't want anyone to think that the issues of women only belong to women. I think that people will be more than surprised to see how, when I have spoken, for example, about Embrace at the level of the board of directors, I've had many men come up to me and say, this is great work. I'm behind this. I'm glad you broke through on this. Everybody's running their own race. Everybody is bringing their authenticity to the table. There's nothing more valuable in me than a man sitting there. I'm just saying that we need to open it and be more thoughtful. So different voices. I happen to be advocating for women, but there's the more diversity of thought there is at that table, by experience, by age, by color, by race, you pick how you cut it. The richer the problem solving will be, and the more valuable the portfolio will be for the foundation, because it will resonate with a broader group of people. And so, I show up as a woman, that's what I am. And so I will tell my story. And, but I think the more different kinds of folks you have at the table, the richer that we will grow. And I think that this office is a great start. And obviously we're all looking forward to and waiting to support how we can help build this and lift it quickly and lift its visibility quickly and have some early successes so that it begins to get out into community. I don't know, Jackie, if you can add anything to what I just said.
Dr. Yogi, I think you kind of surmised that pretty excellent. I think, having more diversity on boards and such like that, to be able to have more of a rich overall conclusion, that part of getting more people involved. So there's different voices that an end product will reach a broader group. I think that's very important, which I think you covered quite well.
We talked about the need to get the word out, bring friends to the table, family. Can you talk about friends of yours that may have brought you or influenced you in your philanthropic decisions or journeys, and or your family, how they may have influenced?
Yeah, for me, it's for my family, I'm taking the lead on that. And, it was my proud moment when I was actually able to get everything finalized, pretty much, I guess, the end of last year. My influences have been, the people that I had worked with, worked for, admired, the donors that I have had the opportunity to meet and understand their path. There's been a lot of influences on me externally, where on a silent basis, I just observe. That's just how I am. I just absorb that and see how I can apply it. But however, on my side of the family with the kids, my niece and nephew, other family members, and making them be aware of now what's important to me, making them realize that, you don't need to wait. And actually, that's something I need to reinforce now that I'm becoming aware of this. This is all I'm still learning. Thank goodness. I'm always happy when I'm learning, that you can start this process a lot younger. Just take the first step and realize, reprioritize what's important to you. And, that's the important step. Now, that's my role, is to make sure that I am making an impression on others, getting people involved, letting them realize what's possible, that it's not just an elite group that can be involved in this. Use social media to get the word out. Whatever it is, what's important to me. If I'm getting a gift, I don't want a gift. I want a contribution to, the scholarship that I'm trying to grow, and it's not going to me. Think about it, that, you're giving a gift to something, a future for somebody else. That to me is what's more important now. So the influences to me, not only family, but friends and people that I've worked with and people that I observe. And I think that's important to get that out there, to have people realize what's the potential.
I think for me, because my parents were political refugees, and they came to New York under the auspices of the church. The Presbyterian Church sponsored their trip out of Cuba, and I think I grew up always with the expectation that when you have, you give. And the question really was, to what, right? And when. And so our whole family is the product of the generosity of others, the fact that we have this, American life that we have now. I grew up in New York in the 70s, and, we would frequently visit the museums, and that's, what you do in New York. And my dad would always say, there's no Hernandez wing here, right? So somebody asked in the chat, what is important about having your name on something? And I frankly thought about that for a really long time for the fellowship, but I wanted to put a stake in the ground and honor both my family, my parents. Hernandez Suarez is my mom and my dad's last names, and show really with intentionality the generosity of Latinos, which I think is not always visible. And we are seeing more of that in Miami, which is amazing, with the Paris Art Museum and other, philanthropic, big philanthropic efforts by Hispanic and Latino families. But my husband is much shyer as a Midwesterner, but for me, it was important that the fellowship carry our names, and that others who have names that sound like mine be inspired, look up and say, hey, look, there's a Hernandez Suarez who gave some money. Maybe I can give some money too. And that is part of the reason why we made the decision to name the fellowship in our names. It was to bring others to the table with names that sound like mine.
Thank you, Dr. Yogi, for sharing that. We talk about that a lot at CasaCuba, given that we think that's really important. And it's also aspirational, right? Because you're able to look up to those buildings and say, I might be there someday. And so I think that's also true for women's names, because we see so often couples or men. And so I think seeing a Jackie up there instead of a Jack, I think, or in addition to, I should say, not instead of, in addition to, I think
Yes.
it's really powerful. And I really think that as we continue these conversations, that requires some stewardship as well, right? I have colleagues who say all the time that, you know, sometimes you speak to very generous people who really kind of want to stay under the radar because it's not about their, you know, getting recognition. And so these colleagues have to say, well, really, it's not just about recognition, right? It's about that aspirational aspect and helping a community understand the power of their visible impact, right? And so I really appreciate your sharing that and you're naming that fellowship. I really think as a Betancourt, right? I think that's something that is very aspirational for me. So I from a personal level, a point of personal privilege, but also, you know, from a generalized way, I think that's really, really meaningful. Are there other sort of vehicles like that that you think we should really be exploring beyond the namings and things like that? I think you spoke to it a little bit. Jackie, why don't you tell us a little bit more what you meant by like social media and putting it out there? I think that's important, right? And as a grassroots level.
Yeah, you know, I do think that social media being such an influence on a lot of things nowadays, everything, news, everything now, people are not using the normal vehicles to actually become aware of current events. They're going through social media. So, you know, in fact, with my scholarship, and I love the timing of it because there was a deadline that applicants needed to apply. So it gave me an opportunity. I don't normally post, you know, things. And certainly when it comes to asking for money for certain organizations, I'm not a person that will normally do that. But this I felt was not for me at all. It was for students. This goes directly to the university. You know, I was able to use social media and was proud of it to actually put it on there, letting people be aware that there was a scholarship, number one, that they could apply for. And number two, FIU allowed that ability to, if people want to donate money towards a scholarship that are going to help students, that was a vehicle as well. So, you know, getting it out there in this new, not new medium, but certainly the vehicle that everybody now is using, I think that's very important. And I plan to, because this is something that I want to continue growing. That's why I say, you know, I think it's important to let people know that just get your foot through the door and then you realize, you start thinking, what else can I do? You know, you really want to work towards growing, you know, a benefit like this for students. So I personally, that's going to be my goal now, is to try and raise more money so that there are more monies available in scholarships for students. Like Dr. Yogi had mentioned, I think getting, you know, yes, with the name and the recognition and that, I thought about that. But I do agree that it's important to have the name because, like I had mentioned previously, you know, that's silent information that a young woman will see a name, a woman's name, and we're just speaking about it. It's important for males too, younger males to get involved, you know, just seeing that. And it may be a quick passover, but then just to realize it's amazing those things stick in your mind and that the ripple effect it will have later on when you realize, oh, that's really something that's possible. So I think, you know, with this type of forum that FIU is doing, and someone asked, you know, how do you think giving will change for the next generation of women and future philanthropy? You know, we are trying to, through FIU, make a difference, doing the inclusion and diversity. And these discussions are so important because we are trying to change, you know, what was the original view of what philanthropy looked like. I think it's maybe it happened before, but you know, the thing is we have to just get it out there in whatever forum that we have available to us, being social media. So we do need to change that. We do need to bring it back to normalcy. And, you know, letting the name of a woman, whether it be Hispanic, minority, whatever the case might be, almost sometimes a picture speaks 1,000 words as well, because people can associate with that, is bringing it back down to, you know, touch and feel. It's not something so far away, something that's not attainable. So with this, you know, with this type of forum and things, as we learn as what else can we do, I think it will have a big impact with the next generation of women and future philanthropy. And I know that's FIU's goal, you know, in this type of forum as we grow.
I want to thank you both. This has been such an invigorating and inspirational conversation that we've had. And I know that it's just beginning. I know we're just really beginning to scratch the surface. And I agree with Jackie when she says, Dr. Yogi, the imagery that you've given us, right, of sort of breaking the ice, it's really powerful. And it's really going to stick with me as we continue to do this work that, you know, and it also, like, not to kill the metaphor, right, but the continual ripple effects of it are really powerful. And we're maybe not going to see those ripple effects until, you know, the next generation will be the one seeing it, right? And it's so rare that you have the kind of conversation that I had the privilege of being part of that conversation yesterday with Jackie. So rare that you get to see the results of it and see, but, you know, you have to have faith and confidence that those are happening. Those things are happening as we do our work. And that imagery that you gave us is really going to stick with me, as will so many of the things that you all mentioned, and really makes me feel proud to be part of an organization and an institution that is doing this work. And I really am grateful to everyone here for their comments and for giving so much of their, not just their time, but giving that personal story that is so important for all of us to hear. So, and I want to thank Maya for her leadership in this effort and assistance putting this together. And Maya, you want to take us home?
Absolutely. Thank you so very much, ladies, for your time on today. We learned so much, and we look forward to continuing the conversation. For those that have attended today, thank you so much. Please be sure to join us next month as we welcome Dudley Alexis, director of the documentary of When Liberty Burns, as we explore the life and death of Arthur McDuffie in 1979 at the hands of police officers, and also recognizing the anniversary of George Floyd's death, also at the hands of police officers, and our role as change agents here at FIU Foundation. So we'll be sure to send you more information about that. And thank you again to our panelists, our moderators, and for those of you that attended. Have a great day.